So essentially with the wand suit, we're looking at fire energy. And generally what the wand suit theme is, what it's all about, is creativity, passion, fire sign energy, ambition. This, if you are lucky, can represent your career. Of course, your career, if it's completely uninspiring to you and you're just doing it for the money and you don't care, like if you work at Burger King and you hate your life, then that hopefully will not be wands. Wands will not represent Burger King as your job, okay? But if you love your career, your passion, this will come out as wands when you read, if that makes sense. So people can correlate them to like fire signs in astrology, right? Leo, Aries, Sagittarius, right? They can correlate them to the element of fire and how that's being used traditionally, culture to culture. Well, you will see this as you look through this deck. We start out with sort of Alexander the Great going off to conquer the world. In the 2, we'll go through the story in a minute. Here he is again. We have a lot of celebration, and then we've got like battle scenes coming up a lot, and victory parades, and more battle scenes, and ones flying through the air like they're freaking javelins or something. And then we've got this really injured-looking guy in the 9 of Wands, who's actually got a bandage on his forehead. Sometimes he's got his arm in a sling. And then we've got this guy who kind of like looks burdened and he's carried off his 10 wands at the end of the story. I'm a fire sign. Anyone else in this room? You poor souls. Okay. So as fire signs,
I'm a Leo.
You're a fire sign. We have a tendency, although we're awesome, to bite off more than we can chew in life and take on massive projects that are like way like impressive, and you can kind of, you know, all the Leos I know are just like, look at me, you know, and that's great, but you can tend to bite off more than you can chew, and sometimes that can be the theme here. I do like to interpret this very positively most of the time. It's just like, hey, this is to do with your passion and your creativity and your life force and your awesome energy. But a lot of the time, the wands can be to do with biting off more than you can chew. And one of the nicest examples that I've found of that, I'm going to bring over and show you, is from the Mystic Fairy Tarot, which I have the book to go with right here by Barbara Moore. And the Mystic Fairy Tarot is really cool because you get a story in each of the suits, which is kind of the potential we'll see as we go 0 through 10. Sometimes 0 through 10 will tell a story. And the story that they make up their stories, they're not like mythic stories or anything, but the Mythic Tarot, I think, has Jason and the Golden Fleece as this story. In this story, there are these 2 little pixies or elves or whatever, and they're like sitting and playing. Well, they're talking about the idea of raising a dragon and how fun it would be to raise a dragon. So they're studying and getting really enthusiastic about raising their dragon here. And here they found a dragon egg, and there's like a 3rd person in the mix who then goes, I don't know if this is such a good idea, and they start kind of quarreling a little bit about the egg. In this card, the dragon has hatched, and this guy's just like, I'm awesome, I am now a dragon daddy, which is like so fiery, you know. And then they're like caring for this dragon, but one of them kind of starts thinking like, this may not be such a hot idea, you know. Dragons kind of get big and sharp and things, and then we see like this dragon's starting to overwhelm this poor guy who's like trying to ride on the dragon's back, and the dragon comes back from like a night on the prowl with like blood all over him, and this guy realizes this is like a little overwhelming actually, and at the end of the day, like this dragon's like way too big for him to handle, and it's a really cool story. But basically, I think that's like the perfect metaphor for the suit of wands a lot of the time. So you're planning to raise a dragon, you know, and that's like so often if things get too fiery, too passionate, that's kind of what it is. Like it's exciting and it's awesome in that way, but it can be kind of like biting off more than you can chew. So I really love the raising of the dragon as sort of the metaphor for that story. In the Medicine Woman Tarot, which we have pikes. Now the other 4 suits in the Medicine Woman Tarot are stones, bowls, and arrows. We know what we use stones for. They're like building material, right? So they're an earth sign. We get that. Bowls is like they're receptive and watery. We understand that as emotion, which we'll look at in a minute. Arrows, hunt. You know, it's like, yeah, it flies through the air. It's communication. It's air sign stuff. This can very often, and this is kind of like how we think of as fire a lot of the time, unfortunately. Pipes? Do we really need pipes? You know, and I mean, the tarot argues, yes, we do. We express ourselves through this suit of creation and passion, right? So it's every bit as important in a way as something as stable as a building block or as receptive as a bowl, to have this pipe energy in your life. But a lot of the time, if you're reading for someone, for instance, who has like, they really want to do a career move that is like their whole heart and ambition to do, but they're kind of stuck and they don't see how they could do that because how can they justify going into this new career because maybe it doesn't make money they need to, or maybe someone will need to support them getting a degree or whatever. We'll see like wands coming up as reversed in readings. And that's really so common in our culture to have like reverse wands. Like so many of us don't get to do what we love for a living. And so that essentially is, you know, very often what a reversed wand would be about.